We are your new market, your new economy. If you do not have Latino representation in decision-making roles, the Latinos are not going to give you their love nor their money. If Latinos do not see themselves, represented in your marketing efforts, in your company, on your board, in your leadership, this as Latinos, we're very loyal, we're good friends, we like to be close to each other. So those companies that are doing good things for Latinos, we're gonna give them our money, our love, and our loyalty as consumers. So do not forget that part. It's not about philanthropy. It's about companies surviving without Latinos and companies thriving with Latinos. That's going to be the difference in the coming years.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Jimen Marrero from Urbender, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of I Have Something to Say. And today we're going to be talking about a very, very important topic, which is that there are a lot of Latino senior executive level talent out there, and that we have experts that can find them and place them. And for that conversation, I brought my friend, the CEO and founder of Latina Chief, Lizette Ibarra. Hi, Lizette. How are you?
Sami, I'm thrilled to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Because you are the queen of finding talent and finding Latino talent. Yes. And so then I needed to make sure that we brought the best of the best to have this conversation, because I feel that it's a myth that we need to debunk. And who better than you than to help debunk this myth that we're unprepared, maybe unqualified, that don't have all of the tools in our toolkit, and that maybe it's quite the opposite, that we're good at multitasking and all of that good stuff that, I want you to share, right, with us your why, after working, in this space of recruitment and talent management and all of that for so many years, you decided to grab the bull by the horns and just take care of business and help us all just find where we need to be to really affect change in all sectors and in all industries. And so welcome, Lisette. And I'm just delighted to have you with us today. And just please talk to me about your journey, the beginning of your journey in this space.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about, not only because I am Latina, because, as you say, there's a lot of myths to debunk and, perceptions that need to be changed, like right away. So anyways, a little bit of my journey. I've been in the talent acquisition space for over 22 years now. So ever since I graduated from college, I've been doing recruitment, interviewing, talent acquisition in some shape or form. And I started my career in corporate, actually. I saw myself like the first 8, 10 years, as a CHRO. I wanted to scale big on the corporate world. And then, life happens, and I became a mom like 8, 10 years after I started my professional career. And I had to shift because, back then when I became a mom 20 years ago, working from home was not even a thing. I mean, like we didn't even have laptops, we had our, PCs on our desks. So you had to be at the office in order to work, we didn't even have cell phones, I think back then, like, it was really possible to have a flexibility, and it was very difficult for me at that time for different circumstances. I didn't have a support system, so I decided to quit my corporate career. And
Wow.
when I did, this executive search firm in California, which provided me with services in the company that I was working for, they invited me to open up their operations in Mexico. I'm originally from Mexico, so I was working in Mexico at the time. So I did because executive search is basically consulting. It has a lot of consulting, so it provided me with more flexibility. So long story short, I worked for that company for 5 years, and then after 5 years, I decided to start my own search company. And to that end, I decided that I was going to hire more women like me that had to quit their corporate careers.
Mm.
They had, they couldn't find a way back into corporate, but that they were super skilled, and ready to be super successful recruiters. So I hired, those women, and we built a very successful company out of that. So the reason I'm mentioning this is just for you and the audience to know that diversity, and especially the success of women has been very close to my heart ever since the beginning of my career. And moving on with that conversation, I immigrated to the States 10 years ago. I've been in Miami ever since. So I really started to get involved, with the Latino community, and I started to do recruitment in the
Mhm.
U.S., very different to what recruitment looks like in Mexico. So I start hearing this, diversity trends, and start hearing, yeah, we want to hire a vice president of finance, but there's not enough, Latino talent, and so on. So I got tired of hearing the same rhetoric, so I decided that I will focus my practice entirely to helping companies find and hire that talent. And that's how I ended up, with Latina Chief, which is specifically aimed to helping companies just, access the Hispanic Latino talent. They believe that it's non-existent, but there is, and we have the means and the expertise to get them closer to that talent. So
Yeah.
that's my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, and the underrepresentation of Latinos in senior positions, it's real. It's palpable, and it's visible or invisible, right? Because you don't see us there, right?
Yeah.
And so the numbers are pretty staggering. I mean, the representation of women in executive teams is what? At the most, what, 8%? We're talking single digits, right? I mean,
We're talking single digits, and actually women, at large in
yeah.
Fortune 1000 companies is 30%. But women Latinas, I don't believe there's one or two CEOs
Right.
Latinas, for instance, in Fortune, 1000 corporations. So yeah, the misrepresentation is just huge. We're almost 20% of the population, 19.2%, and representation is 4.2% of Latinos in executive roles.
Oh,
And
wow.
get me started with Latino representation at the board level, because we don't even make it to 2%. And it doesn't make any sense. And I think this is because you started the conversation talking about myths. And I think
Mhm.
it's really important to really tackle those myths. Because what I hear day in and day out is that there's not enough Latino talent for those
Mm.
roles, either in numbers or in skills, which is totally untrue. Or that you have to compromise skills in order to bring Latino talent, which is untrue, right? And the third is that Latinos, and this is huge, but we need to talk about this. Latinos are made or came to this country to do entry level jobs or labor work, which is absolutely untrue. So I think that is the big elephant in the room. Three myths and misconceptions are huge. I don't believe corporations are able to articulate them, not even amongst Latinos. When I have these conversations with Latinos about numbers and representations, they're even surprised. Like, what are you talking about? When you talk about, the contribution, the GDP, where 62% of the population, 2.8 trillion in GDP. We're the fastest growing GDP, just right after China and India. Latinos in the US only. So the numbers are staggering, and yet the misrepresentation or the lack of representation is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, right? Imagine if we were duly right or properly represented. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness, could you imagine the GDP?
exactly.
Could you
Exactly.
imagine the impact on the economy and
Exactly.
across all sectors, the impact on innovation, the impact on the future of work, the impact on business ownership and on creating opportunities? I mean, it's incredible. And so how do you, okay, because this is the esta es la pregunta de los 24,000 chavitos, right? This is the question that
Yeah.
needs to be answered. How in the world are you able to, and I'm sure it's not easy, right, to change the mindset of a system that is clearly a broken, and secondly perhaps not even conditioned or prepared to engage with, right, in the proper manner with Latino talent, because we do have a different lens and a different perspective.
Yeah, yeah. I think the first part is showing, these corporations that they do have a genuine interest in bringing more Hispanics and Latinos, and that's important to be genuine and not just, checking the box because,
Yeah.
I don't play that game. Like if I sense that you want to bring Hispanic or Latino talent just because you need, a different face on your leadership team, that's not the game we want to play. Corporations have to realize that by bringing diversity, it's not about skin tone, it's about the lenses you bring to the table to
Mhm.
be able to see things in a different way and to bring different solutions and to be innovative and to be able to represent the customer of tomorrow, the customer of today, which is Latino.
Mhm.
We need to understand that this is not about philanthropy anymore. I think the beginnings
Mm.
of the conversations around diversity were more towards the philanthropy, subject. But this is, I mean, the Hispanic representation is not about, philanthropy. When you talk that Latinos are, 19.2% of the population in the US, and you do not have them represented in leadership roles where decisions are made, where strategies are defined, then it's about corporations surviving without Latinos and about corporations thriving with Latinos. That's going to be the difference, whether you decide to bring, Latino talent or no. So back to your question, first is showing them, that when I have conversations with corporations, they're like, yeah, we're looking for this role. We would like to see diverse talent. And, if you find some Hispanics and Latinos, that will be fun. Like, let me show you. So the first step is, showing them. And, it's, I cannot explain to you the pleasure that gives me to see their faces. Like, they asked me, where did you find these people? Like, where did you find this, vice president of finance or this vice president? Where are they hiding? They're not hiding. The thing is, they're not hiding. They're out there. But here's the different lens, approach. I believe the problem is that corporations are used to looking in the same places with the same
Mm.
method, and they're not going to find different people with those lenses and with those methods. And that's what we bring to the table. That's different. I grew up in Mexico. I know how to recruit in Mexico and Latin America, but I do also know how to recruit in the States. Where with the Latino community, and I have a huge network, and I know that almost for every Latino cohort there's an organization, and I have built relationships with them. So it's a different way of doing things that
Yeah.
produces different results. And it's just amazing to see the corporations that are working towards that step. Is just amazing to see the results.
That's great. And so then, and clearly, there's a need across all industries. I mean, we don't even have to get into that topic, right? But where do you see for Latinos out there, right, the biggest opportunities?
As you said, I couldn't. tell that there's a lack of Latino in a specific niche, because I found them like everywhere and in every category. But I would say a little bit more in technology is
Mhm.
where we occupy, probably more spaces, but still. It's all about perceptions once again. When you realize that there's 67 million of Latinos in this country, and you need one chief of marketing, one, that's one person that you need. You don't need the entire population. So
Right.
don't that you're not going to find one individual in this country skilled enough to occupy, that role. It's just it doesn't happen that way. So when you talk about leaders, they're out there. So you need to find them.
Yeah, and you know what? It's very interesting too that the misconceptions are so embedded um in technology and in across all industries, but just this week and I was talking to a friend and her son's already grown. He's like in his early 30s. And I was like, "Oh, how's your son doing?" And she said, "Oh, he's doing great. I'm not going to mention the company, but he's working for this big company now, and he's an engineer in technology, right? And kind of sort of in a leadership role, but not yet, right? You know, he's having his challenges, but it was interesting because she tells me they talk every day. It's her only child, and lives out of state. But he calls her just this past week and tells her that they were in a meeting, right? And that something came up that was in Spanish. And everybody on the team was like, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what this means." And so he's like, "Let me see." And he translated it on the spot. And he's very Eurocentric presenting, right? So but he's Mexican, right? He's of Mexican descent. And
Right.
so that he translated on the spot and that he was like, "Mama, you had to see their faces. They were like, how did you know?" And he's like, "Oh, because I'm Mexican American." And that they were stunned,
Yeah.
like how no, they like they're wired, that
Yeah.
he could tell that they were completely confused,
Yeah.
that they were like Scooby Doo, like 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 a puppy, like completely confused in that moment. But it's to your point, right? That representation is so scarce, and then you just fall in line with expectations and with the predominant language that's English in these industries and all of that. And so then unless a very unique circumstance comes up that you're able to then show, right, other skills and talents that you have, right? So he saved the day actually because
Wow.
they were trying to decipher, right, something, and then
I,
yeah.
I love that story. And again, it's a perfect example what the different lenses bring to the table. And let me give you a quick story as well. When I was 18 years old, I was, still in Mexico. I decided that I wanted to be an exchange student and come to the States for my senior year and, graduate here so I could learn English. So, by then I didn't speak English. So I did, and I came, to the States for a full year. I lived in a very, very tiny, small town in Pennsylvania. I had never seen snow in my life. So, and I got to experience the coldest winter in 20 years, or at least that's what they say. So, anyways, long story short, when I went back to Mexico after that year, yes, I did learn to speak English, but oh my gosh, the experience, like nowadays, when I talk to clients, I know, what living in the raw winter is. I know what living in a small town with no mall in America is. I know what Sunday school is because as part of the experience, I went to church with my host family, even though it was a different religion to mine. And
Mm-hmm.
those experiences, I mean, I cannot tell you the number of times that have saved my day because I understand I've done a lot of business always with American corporations. So I get to understand much more than English just because I have, experienced that year of high school here in the States. So I always tell people, try to find experiences that shake you off your comfort zone, like, study abroad or at least 6 months, try to get involved in a project with a different culture so you can grasp, those different lenses and you can bring them to the table. I think that is, key to adding value and innovation to your work every day.
Yeah, yeah. And we see that, right? And so what would you say you've seen throughout your, talent acquisition and identification and placement experience are some of the feedback, that you've received about, wow, this candidate, right? And the multiple aspects of them that people are shocked, right? That they have all of these things packaged into one person, because it happens a lot, right?
Yes,
With Latinos.
exactly. Again, is that wow factor that, yeah, because if you're bringing a Latino to the table, you're bringing two cultures to the table,
Right.
right? The Hispanic, and if that person has been working in this country for, 10, 15, or is a second generation, Hispanic Latinos, you bring two cultures at least two cultures to the table,
Mhm.
and at least two languages to the table, which is key for innovation. So I see a lot of that wow factor, but I have to tell you as well that, it takes corporations, a little time to believe. Like I can see the
Mm.
faces when they hire us and like, okay, let's show me. Like, yeah, let's do this diversity thing. Let's do this, Hispanic thing, and let's try
A
to
little
bring some.
skeptical, a little
Let,
skeptical. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the more skeptical they seem, the happier I am because I know, I'm gonna see their faces afterwards. It's just a pleasure too, because Hispanics and Latinos, there's so much talent out there. And there's the other part, I believe also that Hispanics and Latinos, we do not advocate enough for ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Like, the story you were sharing about your friend's son. He
Mhm.
he how long has he worked for that company?
Who
And they didn't
knows?
and they didn't know he speaks Spanish. How
Yeah.
come? Like,
Yeah.
that
And
should
I told her, you need to tell John, by the
yeah,
way, that
yeah,
he's a unicorn. And she's like, how's
exactly.
that? And I said, do you know that out of all professionals that are working in STEM, only 8% are Latino? And
Yes.
she's like, wait, what? And I say, yes, only
Yeah,
8% of people working in STEM are Latino. And so John is a unicorn.
exactly.
Okay. And you better tell him that. Right.
Yeah,
And she's like, okay, I will,
exactly.
And so,
That,
yeah.
that's exactly my point, that we hold these things back and we need to put them forward, for
Mm,
corporations, what else we bring to the table. So we have to do our work as well, with regards, advocating for ourselves and for other, fellow Hispanics and Latinos and Latinas that we know they're talented, that, they might, not advocate enough for themselves. We need to give them a push. We need to give them a voice if we're already, confident with having that voice. So there's a lot of work to do.
And is that part of the process of the support that you provide candidates to coach them through that interview and to make sure, like, what does that look like on a typical engagement, right?
Yeah. When I'm talking to candidates that, I'm, putting them into the funnel to this recruitment
Mhm.
process, the first thing they say to me is, I don't want to be hired because I'm Latino or Latina.
Mm,
And that's important too. And they're right.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
again, that's the tokenism game. And you don't want to play that game. And we don't
mhm,
want corporations to play that game. So I tell them, no worries. I mean, this is a talent pool with very qualified candidates, which you're a part of. If you lack one skill that is needed for this, for this job, you wouldn't be here. You're here because, you have all the skill sets that are needed. But you're not going to get that job because you're Hispanic and Latino. You're here because you're skilled and you're talented. So it's been a surprise to me to hear that question, over and over again. And I'm glad they asked, because we shouldn't allow, just to bring diverse talent, whether Hispanic, Latino, or any other, minority, just because of skin color, or, just because you want to check a box. That's the game we don't want to play, the tokenism game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And so I've heard, right, from other people, and I've seen it too, right, within our circles, that a lot of professionals that are seeking um more senior level positions go or invest a lot of time and energy, and that their resumes are so strong, and their experience too, because they take on like a double masters, they take on uh doctorate level studies, or they take on additional responsibilities and are very well rounded in terms of their skill sets,
Yeah.
because they're quick to volunteer and
Yeah.
and step into other roles just to get more visibility and to demonstrate, right? It's almost like that term, run the extra mile, and with Latino talent, sometimes you almost, I remember, because I was in that position, right, that I was overlooked so many times, to be the publisher of
Yeah.
of this national magazine, Latino magazine, and it was a Latino magazine on top of that, right, but it was an American owned company. And I was so frustrated, because it's like, coño, I'm here, I'm right here, hello, and so then it was
It
very,
is.
very frustrating. Uh-huh.
It is a reality. It is a reality, and it shouldn't be that way. And we have to change that reality. And we have to change it by, working towards getting, advocacy within corporations, getting advocates that speak for us, even when we're not on the table. And we have to raise our voices, and we have to demand transparency. Like, let's talk about, pay equity. That's a big issue, especially for
Yeah.
Latina. When we know
Mm-hmm.
that 54% out of the dollar that a traditional, white male does, it doesn't make any sense. It's totally unexplained. There's been studies that try to understand that gap. There's no explanation, rather than it's just, inequality. So
Yeah.
we need to ask questions. What is the pay range for this role that I'm doing? What are my peers? If you cannot tell me the number, at least if you ask the question, can you ensure me that I'm, making equal pay than the rest of my, peers? That's going to raise, some eyebrows. But we have to be brave, and we have to, address those concerns. Because if we stay, quiet, I have this friend, she works in financial services, and she was ecstatic because, her manager, calls her up and says, I want to meet with you. So we were doing, some, salary reviews, and guess what? We found some, discrepancies there. So you're going to get a huge bonus and a huge. And so she goes back home, super happy, to her husband. And the husband says, are you crazy? They just acknowledge that you've been underpaid for so many years, right? And she was like, you're totally right. But I told her, at least they're trying to fix it, right? They're trying
Right.
to,
Right.
because
Right. Right.
I think transparency is the path that we need to seek in terms of salary equity and, equal pay. It's
Yeah.
going to be a long path, but we need to get there.
Yeah, and it's possible, right? I think the more representation we gain also, the more empowered we feel to come together and speak up collectively,
Yeah.
to that aspect, right, of the disparities that we're experiencing. Now, one of the things that I feel also that we're kind of killer at is at developing relationships, because and do you find that that's a big strength that you see also in the candidates that you're putting forth? Because I feel that, just based on cultural competency training that we do for different companies and teams, this aspect of familismo, that as Latinos we have ingrained in our identity, this urge and this insatiable need to feel like we're family with the people around us, right? That I just feel that in the corporate sector, it really lends itself to really building solid relationships of trust. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, that's one unique trait that we bring to the table. Like we genuinely, we care about other people. And that, that doesn't mean that we're not strong or that we're not, skilled, because you can be compassionate and you can be, very successful and, and have high standards at the same time. So I think that's a skill for sure that we have, it's not a skill, it's something, as you said, that's embedded in our, ADN, and that we bring to the table. But it can have a double effect that there's going to be people that's going to like that trait, and there's going to be people that are kind of uncomfortable with that, closeness and familiarity. So yeah, it can
Yeah.
play both, but absolutely
Yeah.
it's something, because that's the way we are. You don't want to hold that back. If they don't appreciate it, so be it. If they do,
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, I just feel that there's a shift going on too. I mean, I was at this event also recently in the last quarter, and the CEO of a company here based in Florida was talking about, they were talking about post-pandemic, you know, reorganization and hiring and all of that. And this man was standing there and said he was lamenting how he had to let go of 2,000 employees during the pandemic. He works in the transportation industry, and so he would, and so no one was traveling, right? So, ni
yeah,
modo. But that was half of his
stuff. Yeah,
workforce,
yeah.
you
Oh,
know. And so then he was and he was white, a white male.
yeah,
And so then he was saying on the podium, and I couldn't believe he actually said this, but he says, I'm having difficulties now rehiring people because they don't want, they've been away for so long, for 8 months, and so we're having a hard time rehiring people. And he goes, and there's this thing called empathy that apparently I lack, that I'm supposed to be tapping into. What? I mean, when he said that, I was like, oh my God. For him to acknowledge that and say it publicly, to me, I was like, there's change happening, because he was clearly, frustrated. This was a clear pain point for him, not
right.
being able to like restaff as
Yeah,
quickly as he needed to now that things were opening up. And it's because the organizational culture is
right.
is adverse to empathy, and wasn't ready to receive, right? And I just feel that, again, in our cultures, our collective cultures, right, we're very much attuned with this understanding and feeling, and comparing lived experiences and saying, see, i
Yeah.
I hear you and I feel you because I've been through that, right? And so I hope that that's the case and that things are changing at the.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the keyword like, empathy. You know, you cannot, the leader of the future, the leader of today cannot lack that skill. They have to be, they're the leaders of the organization. They have to be driven and they have to be, be able to bring the organization towards very clear objectives. But when you're able to combine that with empathy and with compassion and really understand people, that is a bomb. Like there's nothing that can stop, that type of leadership. That makes, when I interview candidates and I see all these skills, all this knowledge, and all these, accomplishments, but they're also, close to you and they want to share with you and they share about their hobbies. To me, that is like, perfect. The perfect candidate is that to me. But you also find a lot of people that, they don't want to talk to you that much. Like, yeah, what do you want me to talk about? No, that is it. That style of leadership is gone. I mean, these leaders, trust me, they're not going to be there, forever.
Yeah, it's passe. This is really fantastic, really, really great. and I'm excited. So what's the dynamic look like? Do you work directly with companies, or are people able to connect with you directly too? Like, is it both? I mean, how can people benefit from your knowledge and expertise, to
Yeah.
be able to land where they're supposed to be?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people misunderstand what headhunter, as we're known, does. So we work for the corporations. Like our client is the company that hire us to find a specific role, like candidates for this specific role. But our source of talent are the people, the candidates. So any candidate that wants to get in touch with us, they want to be in our talent pool, they can absolutely reach out to us. A lot of people expect to have an interview when they send you a resume, and that's not going to happen, not with us, not in with any recruitment company, because it's not the way it works. We invest our time in working with the clients, developing the candidates that we're going to be presenting for that specific role. But the doors are always open for you to send your resume. And when the time is right and when we are tapping or working in the right opportunity for you, then we're going to give you a call and we're going to start developing that relationship.
Yeah. The critical point here is that you just have to be there. You have to have your stuff,
Exactly.
okay, in Lisette's expert hands. So when the opportunity comes,
Exactly.
okay,
Connect.
the queen of the
Yeah.
Latino Chiefs is gonna find you that golden opportunity, right?
And more than sending the resume, what I tell candidates is you have to do your work networking. Like you cannot, when you want to find a different job, if you haven't done your work networking on LinkedIn, for instance, which LinkedIn is not to find a job, LinkedIn is a must. And you know that because I know you're a lot
Yeah.
of, I cannot see my life without LinkedIn. Like, my professional life and, everyone's professional life needs LinkedIn because that's where you build a network, when you follow thought leaders, when what's going on in your industry, what other leaders are saying, and you start building your professional branding through LinkedIn. That's one way. It's not the only way. But I see so many executives that have their LinkedIn like abandoned, or they don't even have
Mm.
a LinkedIn account because they think LinkedIn is for when they want to find a job, and that is not true. You know that.
No.
I built incredible relationships over LinkedIn because we follow each other over time, and then what is he talking? Oh yeah, and then we connect. Hi, nice meeting you. But that develops over time. It's a slow cooking process. So we have
Yeah.
to do. Candidates need to do their work in building their professional branding, on LinkedIn, and also outside of LinkedIn, not online. There's plenty of associations that you should belong to. Participate, volunteer your time. Find out what they're doing and be out there because by the time you want something or you need something from your network, you have those relationships established already. Otherwise, it's going to take a long time. So
Yeah.
for I had that conversation with someone this morning today. You have to work on LinkedIn and you have to be outside as well networking. Networking is critical to everyone's success.
Yeah, and I love that idea of volunteering too, because I mean, while I'm not anymore in the corporate sector working, I do work with corporate clients too,
Yeah,
right? So, but when I first started the business, it's like how do I develop a reputation?
yeah,
How do I? So I volunteered on boards, on committees, on in
exactly.
community organizations, and then they would say, and I would say, hey, do you need marketing, do you need a press release, do you need communications? And y lo hacía gratis, right? And I would do it as my give back to the community. But then slowly people then realize, oh, wait a second, you
Yeah,
do this, you do that, and then you are able to demonstrate your capabilities, your the results that you have, and the value that
yeah,
you bring to the table. And then that's it. Then opportunities come and they're like, oh, wait a second, you need to call Sami, you need to call
yeah,
Lise, you need to call Sandra, you need to, and we know, and we're all interconnected. At one point we find our tribe, right? So then
yes,
those spheres of influence grow and grow and become bigger and bigger. And I got to tell you, I agree with you. LinkedIn is my playground. I love.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And
Communicating on LinkedIn, sharing. I mean, I feel bad because Facebook, I rarely show up there, you
yeah,
know.
but LinkedIn is not a social network. It's not. It's a professional tool that you
Yeah.
need. You need to nourish and to work on every day. Like literally, the first thing that I do in the mornings is I log into LinkedIn and I see, 5, 6 posts. I don't post that much because I don't have the time, but once a week I try to create something good, something that will add value to the people that follow me. But literally, we need to shift that mindset of that LinkedIn is just for finding a job. It is not. I mean, you
Mm-mm.
need this to survive. Hopefully you will be have a robust network on LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn by the time you need it, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be too late.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Lisette, thank you so much for all of this insight, for sharing your experience and your suggestions and recommendations, and also for being an advocate. I see you really as an advocate for our community, especially since we know that in the next 10 years, according to the Department of Labor, 78% of net new workers here in the US are going to be Latino. Could you imagine? It's like all those young people that are graduating from college and that are going into the workforce are really needing to step into good opportunities and making sure that they're able to help their families experience social mobility, and it's through advocates like you, that they're going to have that chance
Absolutely.
to get the exposure that they need. And any final words, any final recommendations that you could give to people that are seeking good opportunities, aside, well, you already kind of covered that with getting involved in all of that, so let me switch that to companies that are still up against the fence
Yeah.
on what to do and how to do it. What would you recommend?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question because, with the numbers that you just gave, our, GDP and we are your new market, your new economy. If you do not have Latino representation in decision-making roles, the Latinos are not going to give you their love nor their money. If Latinos do not see themselves, represented in your marketing efforts, in your company, on your board, in your leadership, this as Latinos, we're very loyal, we're good friends, we like to be close to each other. So those companies that are doing good things for Latinos, we're gonna give them our money, our love, and our loyalty as consumers. So do not forget that part. It's not about philanthropy. It's about companies surviving without Latinos and companies thriving with Latinos. That's going to be the difference in the coming years.
You just dropped the mic, Lisette. I don't. That's it.
Is
I mean, that this is business, right? This is a business proposition, and
This is
that's
a
all
business.
it is.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So either you do it or you're gonna be left behind, unfortunately,
I'll be
right?
watching pioneers who, walk the talk and understood that this is a business, imperative, just thriving up there. And you're going to be behind. You're going
Yeah,
to want to,
totally. Well,
right?
listen, yes, yeah, I can't agree with you more. Absolutely. Thank you so much for making this time, taking the time to have this conversation that is so critical in the future of this country, in the future of, our society and also of our community. And so I thank you. Thank you so much for carving out the time because I know how busy you are.
My pleasure, Sami. I was thrilled to be here today. And thank you for allowing me, this space to share with you. And let's, continue to advocate for each other. And, hopefully we will see much more Latinos and Latinas in leadership roles in corporate America.
Thank you so much, Lizette. Un abrazo y un beso. Bye bye.
Gracias. Chao.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Jimen Marrero from Urbenter, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU.